Sahanavavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryankaravavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Okay, so perseverance means, persisting and making a effort, which is a sincere effort. And in Vedanta, perseverance, what does one do? So there are many different areas in which one has to make an effort because it's the whole truth. So the first thing is what we call Shravanam, Mananam and Nididhyasana, this whole exercise of listening to what Shastra is talking about and trying to remove your doubts and to contemplate on what Shastra is talking about, which is the final truth. So that is, cannot be once a week or it cannot be once a year. There has to be some consistent input and study, right? Regular study. So that is one form of perseverance. This is the study of the scriptures which reveal that you are the whole. But in addition to that, we have many different other things that we need to work on. So what we are studying now is cultivating values. They have got nothing to do with dharma. I mean, nothing to do means you can be a highly dharmic person and still very arrogant. You can be a highly dharmic person and not accommodate others. Do you understand? Because you may not be, but there are people who can be highly dharmic in the sense that they never tell untruth, but they can be very intolerant of other people. That is possible. You see that.
I wouldn't call it dharmic, but maybe.
But you see what I mean? So therefore, the values are. It's not enough not to harm anybody, not enough not to cheat anybody, not enough not to lie. One needs to cultivate these attitudes and values which are much more than just, not to harm anybody, right? So the values are another area. There is another area which is what we call emotional maturity. We are very often in denial of our emotions, or we dissociate with our emotions, and Vedanta creates a very possible platform where you can easily escape your emotion and you can say emotions are part of the mind and I am a Brahman, but it doesn't work like that. One needs to first address one's emotions before the mind. See, why is it important? Because the mind is the place where ignorance is, and the mind is the place where ignorance has to go. That's why the mind's preparation is very important. You have to solve the whole problem. That's why human birth is very important. Why? Because this human body and mind that is given to you is capable of advanced thinking, which allows you to know things about the universe, and also, if you are interested, to remove ignorance about yourself. So even though, in fact, it's very interesting, every other knowledge that you have known, you have to use your mind. Without using the mind, you can't know anything. Mind is a place where knowledge takes place. But what is so different about this knowledge and every other knowledge? So what just in general, right? Because I want to show you that this knowledge also takes place in the mind. That's why all these values are needed, which cleans up the mind in order for mind to reach this truth. So every other knowledge that you have gained, suppose this is the mind and it knows things of the world. It knows quantum physics, it knows nuclear physics, it knows history, it knows geography, and this is like the world. So you use the mind to know things in the world. How does Vedanta work? You use the same mind to figure out its own truth. It has to work backwards. Do you understand? But mind is used. Otherwise, you will not be sitting and listening to me. And you will not be reflecting on the Shastra. You will not be using your intellect to figure things out. So what it means is the mind is a necessary tool to know anything that you have to know. The only difference is the mind is used to knowing things which are external. And now what you have to do is to use the mind to know its final truth. And what is difficulty is that this mind is not just a mind, it's your identity. I am. So that means that you can be a genius in knowing this thing, but your I sense is still in the mind. Here, so the mind is used to ruling the roost, because its identity as I am is not threatened when you look into quantum physics. But when you begin to operate Vedanta, the mind's entity as I am is threatened. Because it has to give up its own truth as being the mind and know one's truth to be something much bigger. So there will be some resistance. And how is the resistance? Oh, this is too intellectual.
I want to feel it.
I want to feel it. Do you understand? Because every other interaction has created some feelings. I want to feel it. I want to experience it. I want to see it. It's all because this is how you have used your mind. And now you still need to use the mind, and the mind is now, the thing is threatened, its entity, its status as I am, which has continued for millennia, cycles of creation, is threatened. So it is going to resist. It will fall asleep. All this will happen. Or it will say, oh no, the Vedanta is going on repeating the same thing. Hey, so many things happen. For you yourself to discourage yourself, because this doesn't want to lose its identity as I am. And that's why you have to be very careful. Or it will tell you, oh, okay, superficially understand what Vedanta has to say. And say, okay, if I'm this, then anyway, this is not my reality, so let's forget about anything to do with this. Do you understand? It will never prepare itself to clearly and really know the truth. That's why we have to guide the mind to become that clear entity, which is not full of distortions and wrong thinking and all of that, so that it can actually reach this final truth, right? Now, so therefore emotional maturity is very important. Why? Because where are all our overwhelming emotions coming from? Small things happen and you can't handle, and it creates a huge reaction in you. What does it mean? You're unable to see that external event as it is. The mind creates a huge, big trauma out of one event. So you have to reduce that tendency of mind to exaggerate, which heightens your suffering. That's why emotional maturity is something that you need to pay attention to. So values, emotional maturity, dharma, of course. Some basic sense of right and wrong that you can't transgress. You can't say, oh, I am free from everything, so therefore let me forget dharma. And finally, what I also wanted, karma yoga, is very important. It's not about dropping out of life, because if you have all these things that you need to cultivate values, emotional maturity, dharma, you need a platform which you can use to get these values. You can't just leave from the world, otherwise, how will you get all of this? But so, life of karma yoga means you continue to do what you're doing, but change your attitude. Engage, but engage with this idea that I want moksha, I want freedom, I want to understand myself, and my interaction with the world will help me to mature so that I can understand. So you are not engaging for the sake of artha or kama, but you are engaging for the sake of moksha. That makes you a karma yogi. Yeah.
Is it possible that someone who has already is liberated as moksha, that he is not living one of those values of those 5 things? For instance, the values. Is it possible?
Wow, that's an interesting question. That's a very interesting question. One thing we need to recognize, and let me just first, lastly, talk about the preparation, and that is what karma yoga and then also bhakti. Bhakti is not, you have to sit and do bhajans. That's not what I mean by bhakti. But all that is here is Ishvara, and if your mind doesn't see that, there is no expansion. So you have to connect and learn to relate with Ishvara. There is no other way. And you have to see the wonder that is the universe, so that your idea that the world is unfair and it is a source of suffering, that also goes. Because it's a very deep conditioning. So some healing has to take place. So this is why these are all the different areas that you do need to work on before, and that is what we call perseverance.
What is the last one,
Now,
please? The last one.
Bhakti.
Bhakti.
Now, Ludwig's question, and that is it possible that the person doesn't have all of this and still gets to know the truth? What do you think? Before I give my own answer, what do you think?
Yes, it's possible.
Yes.
Okay, why? Now, okay, you think it's possible. Why? How?
I think liberation also can happen to a person who's not familiar with Dharma, Karma Yoga, and everything. And it's not prepared by a proper teaching, I would say. Yeah, that's one reason. Maybe there are more.
Anybody?
I would say that once you know who you are, your conditioning doesn't know who you are. All the vasanas, which are also stored in your body and in your memory, that still will go on, like your body will go on. So that is work then that you have to, or not. Some people choose, I'm free, so I can do what I want. But if you want to go on after this moksha, then it's fine to do some work.
Okay.
I think that even if you had glimpses of who you are, in the end you will fall back if you get actually beaten by your, in my own words, personal faults and blindness, and then you will find yourself in a field of troubles, and which I don't think you remain really happy and open then. Because existence comes back to you. It is not just you. Yeah. No, that's what.
Okay. Anybody else has any thoughts?
Well, once any realization takes place, it begins only with actualization.
Yeah.
It begins only with?
Actualization.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So, sorry, I didn't understand. So what does it mean?
Well, it's the same.
Well, you're saying same thing as
Yeah.
her? Okay.
Yeah.
Actualization is a term from James Schwartz.
Okay, yeah,
He
because I
uses
don't
that,
use this
so-
word, so I don't know what it means actually, yeah.
I actually also don't know. I think no one will. I think something like full Buddhahood, but I don't really know what it is and whether it ever exists
What
for
is-
some person.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think you will always have some things to work on.
yeah, okay. So, this is a very tricky question, because it's very hard to answer one way or the other. Because why? I'll tell you why, right? Now, what the person, the wise person that the Vedanta is talking about is the one who has understood, right? What makes you really wise is that I am not just this body and mind, but I'm much more. I'm awareness, which is limitless. And this awareness has got nothing to do with the qualities of the body and mind. This is the final understanding. And that's where you can say it's actionless. You can say this because this doesn't move, in which everything else moves. So this is true. So later on, if you really understand this, then the conditions of the body and mind actually in reality for the person who has understood becomes irrelevant.
Becomes?
Irrelevant because they don't have any connection with this final truth. So, and the body and the mind is an instrument, and it is a programmed instrument. It cannot always be perfect. But the problem is that then to get here, you need this. Why? Because you can't decide when you will become the person who knows. So, how does it happen? So, for everything, right? So, just let's start with a simple example. Newton did not get up in the morning and said, today I'm going to discover gravity. The gravity was already there way before Newton knew it. But something else had to happen, right? Why that particular day, certain reality dawned on him. And why did it not dawn on any other person walking on the street? Because Newton had prepared himself for years, deeply engaged with science. Then one day, his mind was so prepared, it was able to capture a given phenomena, which is the truth, in that particular context. So what it means is, in music, for how many years you have to study raga before you can become creative and you can create your own combinations. So yes, creativity is great, but it comes after years of practice. Years and years. So, similarly, after living many years of values, right, this is all to get the mind which can actually capture the right meaning, and it doesn't create its own meanings and starts kind of, creating its own imagination and bubbles and starts from the bubble. You need a mind which is a prepared mind. Because that mind has to become a deserving recipient of such a big truth. So you can't bypass all of this. You can't bypass values, you can't bypass life of karma yoga, you can't bypass dharma, you can't bypass emotional maturity. Now, but when you have done all of this, at one point you can come to know, but ultimately the mind and body is just an instrument, so it can go off a little. But if you are really wise, you have done years of training. Suppose, in one concert, a super artist, right, while singing, goes off a little bit the tune. What will the person do? You may not even recognize that he is gone off tune. What will he do? He or she do? Bring himself back into that harmony. He recognizes small deviation. So if that person is sincere, the mind will go here and there. But what if after years and years and years of living this life, even if the mind for some reason goes off a little, the person will be able to bring it back. Then only you enjoy the freedom. Otherwise you are just escaping, right? I'm whole. So there is no rule that the mind will always do everything right. But you can't then use it as a license not to take care of the mind. And if you are mature and if you know the truth, you will recognize that the mind is going off and you will bring it back. And you will not let it go off and create, and go get carried away. Because you have years of practice. So this is the answer. Now, why does it seem as though without proper traditional studies and all, some people just kind of know it, right? Without saying that I'm doing this or I'm doing this, people, have certain maturity. And what we say is that this life is not the only life. So you may have studied, so you carry forward samskaras. So you have people who know mathematics. They are advanced in mathematics at the age of 10. How is it possible? So there was, did you all see this movie? It was an amazing movie. You all have to see it. The Man Who Knew Infinity. You have to go and see that movie. It is about this Indian mathematician, Ramanuja. And he was so brilliant. He could see all the mathematics. I mean, he was just able to figure so many things out. And he never went to school. He was sitting in the temple in South India. And then he was, all the things about mathematics were just coming. So then he was so good that he went to, I think, either Oxford or Cambridge. He got a scholarship. So he went there. And the professors in Cambridge and Oxford, right, asked him, "Hey, Ramanuja, how are you coming up with these equations?" So what is his answer? That all these equations are dancing in front of my eyes. They are all Devis. They are dancing in front of my eyes. But what was really interesting, that movie was very clever. It was nuanced movie, right? So that scientist at Oxford said, anything could be dancing in your head. How do you know it's the truth? So then what was very interesting is, as a result of that interaction between Oxford or Cambridge professor and Ramanuja's buddhi began to kind of be trained a little bit, that it is dancing in front of you, but you have to give some logic to show that it is the right thing, right? It's not enough to just say that it is how I see it, because you can be seeing anything. Itself does not establish truth. So you have to find a certain method or a methodology to show to the world that this is how it is. And the Oxford scientists learned from Ramanuja that you can't just arrive at everything just logically. There is certain thing called intuition. But for that to happen, right, when something clicks and you know something much more than even you knew that you could know. But for that to happen, you have years of preparation. You have years which people don't see. So whether in this life or in past life, somehow, right, when you are prepared. So suppose, so in Bhagavad Gita, there is a nice verse. Arjuna asked Lord Krishna, what if I don't understand what you are telling fully in this lifetime?
Nothing is wasted.
Exactly.
Take it with
So
you.
Lord Krishna says, nothing that you have done is wasted. It's all carried forward in the next life. So next life you will already come with an advantage. So that life you did not actually have to restart working from the beginning. You come with what in Sanskrit we call it samskaras. You come with aptitudes, certain things which others find very difficult, you get attracted to. It resonates with you. It's all some past preparation. So yes, it is possible to see like that, but God knows when they have prepared themselves, right? Every time you don't have to start from the beginning. But all this is required. So sthairiam, perseverance, is not just one thing. One has to actively work on many, many different things. So if you want Vedanta in your life, it keeps you busy.
Well, me.
There's a lot of internal work, and then you don't need any external entertainment, because now imagine you have to think about let me pay attention to my emotional maturity, and your mind will one day be sad, then you have to look into it.
It keeps you off the street.
Yeah, it keeps you. So this is what it means, right? So years of dedication is required. So okay, so sthairiam. Then the next is atma vinigraha. That's the next value. Is called Atma Vinigraha. Here Atma doesn't mean the final reality, it is what we call self-mastery. Now, some people use this Vinigraha, the Sanskrit word, and they translate it as control of the mind. You have to control your mind. But we don't use this word just because of a few things that you need to understand about your mind. So the first thing is that mind is a constant flow of thought. And suppose I ask you, what are you going to be thinking about tomorrow at 10 p.m.? You don't know. And suppose I ask you, what will you be thinking about at 2 p.m. today? You don't know. What is going to be your next thought? Unless you pre-plan it, that I'm going to sing Om Namah Shivaya, or I'm going to, in general, you don't know it. So something that you don't even know what the next thought is going to be, how can you control? It's an impossibility. If you knew, you can control, but if you don't know, you can't control. So controlling of the mind is not possible, but what we can do is master the mind. And what is the difference between controlling and mastering the mind? The thought comes. It doesn't take your permission. And as I told you, that sometimes you tell yourself not to think about this, your mind will think more about it. Like this elephant, right? Somebody wanted some impossible thing and Buddha said, I'll give you this, but you don't think of an elephant. So he thought that was very easy. Who thinks of an elephant when you eat? But the fact that he had told him that don't think of an elephant while you're eating, every time he thought about it. So therefore, and so these kind of pressures that we put, I should never be angry again. I should never have any pain if I'm a wise person. So these are all pressures that we create. So this is why what we do need to do is to recognize the fact that the thought comes without asking you for permission. And sometimes you yourself are surprised. How come I have this thought now?
Yeah.
How am I stuck with jealousy?
Yeah.
Right? How am I stuck with hatred, so much hatred? So much self-criticism. So these are all things that we are all stuck with. It surprises us. Thought having come. What is self-mastery? Thought comes. What do you do with that thought is self-mastery. There are different things that you can do with your thought. So one thing is, how long is the thought going to rest with you if you don't do anything about it?
Not long.
Not long. Just a few seconds. So what you can do is not get totally engaged with it, don't get totally identified with it, but just let it pass. If you don't engage with it, it loses its capacity to stick. It
Then you have
loses.
to have this awareness that you're not your thought.
Yeah, so exactly. So that is here. All these values are within Bhagavad Gita, 13th chapter, right? So already Arjuna has little bit understood, right? But what we are saying is generally even if you don't know that, right? So many people practice this. It is called observing your thought. This is a common practice, not only done by people who study Vedanta. No, that just observe your thoughts. There is this meditation where people go for 10 days meditation. The whole meditation is about observing the thoughts and letting them pass. So that means if you don't engage with the thought, they lose their capacity to stick to you, right? But this is not the only technique. Please don't think, people think that whole Vedanta is only about seeing the thoughts coming and going. This is one of the things that you can do. But the other things that you can do is, some thoughts are very deeply rooted in us. And they have become deep orientations. And they keep recurring. Feeling of lack of love, feeling of isolation, feeling of depression. It's not just one thought. Feeling of fear. A mind in any scenario creates fears, and it's a habit of the mind. So that means these are not just one-time thoughts. They have taken a deep root in you, and they have created neuron pathways which are very thick. So external stimuli comes, and your mind goes there, and this is how you feel. So they require what we call correction. So there are some thoughts which you need not engage with, let them pass. But there are certain thoughts which have taken deeper root. They require correction. As I just told you, like jealousy in the morning, right? You see somebody who excels in something, and you feel small. And then you feel jealous. What do? You put the person down. This is almost like an automatic response, which is a learned behavior for a very long time. You have to learn to break that pattern. It will not go just like that. Self-criticism, it's a pattern that you have to break consciously. Next time you find yourself criticizing yourself, saying I'm small, I'm inadequate, I'm a failure, I'm whatever, you have to stop it and you have to say no. There are, and replace them with nurturing thoughts, which are true. So that means that there is so there is no one thing that you do. Do you understand? For self-mastery, you need to have discrimination. Some things you let pass, some things require correction. Your tendency to be demanding respect or pretense needs to be corrected. Your tendency for himsa needs to be corrected consciously. So this is what we call correction of certain thoughts which are deeply entrenched, and they create a pattern which decides how you behave and how you feel. So they need to, if they are dysfunctional, they have to be broken. So that is the second thing that you do. And the third thing that you can do is cultivate some other thoughts which are kind and compassionate in nature, which lead to expansion. So this is what we call cultivating thoughts. That increase your connection with the universe. Makes you a kind, generous, understanding, accommodating human being. So in Buddhism, Dalai Lama puts incredible emphasis on having a compassionate mind. It's a very, that sensitivity is important. What is the truth? That you are all connected, because all that is here is Ishvara, so everything is connected to everything else. If your mind tells you, who cares what happens to others? It is caught in its own reality. If your mother did not care about what you did, you will not survive. So, her caring and showing love, it's all, these are what we call a very evolved emotions. We need to cultivate them. It doesn't, so there is one thing that we need to understand, that a human mind has come, there is a gift from Ishvara, and that is empathy. What is empathy? This is a biological fact. And what is empathy? So empathy is, first we have to define what empathy is. Suppose I am walking and I hurt my arm and I'm in pain. Do I need to deliberate for a long time? What should I do? You immediately go and help yourself, right? You go, you run, you seek help, you put a band-aid or whatever, right? So you care for that particular part of yours. You're not indifferent to it. And it is just a natural program. A child bites one's own tongue and starts crying. And then, try to, find a time where, it doesn't hurt. It'll just take care. So this is why, with reference to ourselves, and this is why, please understand, just as without thinking, we all take care of our body. If you have studied Vedanta, do you say, I'm not the body, so I'm not going to take care of this wound? You will. Because it's a gift that is given to you. Yesterday, he was making us sing a beautiful song. That what was the song? That life is a gift.
Yeah.
What? We
sing.
We sing?
Yeah, we sing. That
life is a gift. Yeah. So you take care of your body. If you are feeling sad, you want to free yourself from that sadness. Nobody is comfortable. So that means you do it with reference to yourself without much effort. It's just so natural. Now the universe has given you a mechanism which is you are not only sensitive to what happens to you, you're also sensitive to what happens to somebody else. This is a natural program of empathy. And what is that? When somebody, suppose you're walking on the street and somebody falls, you will. Nobody can just say, oh yeah, this is just one body which is falling and oh, it is all Ishvara. We don't say that. Hopefully, if you're a human, you'll go and you'll do something and to help that person. What makes you do that? What makes you reach out to somebody else? We have a mechanism which is given by the Ishvara. That is what we call, in terms of neurosciences, mirror neurons. What is the job of mirror neurons? Mirror neurons tell you, just as you are uncomfortable with your pain, it also makes you appreciate that others are also uncomfortable. And even if your own system does not report somebody else's pain, but you can empathize with that person because you know how it is to suffer. And just as for your own system, you will do what you can to free it from suffering, you can also reach out to somebody else. It's almost, you don't even need to think. It's almost natural. Empathy. But that natural program, like any other natural program of dharma, we don't always act according to it. Why? Because we use our mind to justify. So what do? So empathy comes, you want to reach out, then you tell yourself, right? Sometimes you can go along with that empathy and help, reach out and help. Or your mind can say, I don't want to get into any mess. What if a police comes and tries to investigate? I don't want to mess with it all. Or if you're spiritual, it's his own karma. Let him experience his own karma. What have I got to do with it? Aborting your empathy. Terrible. When you begin to use your spirituality with this kind of a thing, for me, it is disturbing. So, what it means is, it's human. If you were lying there, helpless, and if people thought it's your karma, and nobody came when you needed help to lift you up, how would you feel? You know what? You get in life what you give in life. If you give love, if you give empathy, if you give care, you receive plenty of it. Your life is fulfilled. If you give indifference to life, even in the name of spirituality, you will get indifference. You will ultimately feel isolated. And then you will feel so many years of study and see, I'm feeling depressed. Because you have not helped yourself. So what it means is that compassion and what is empathy? Empathy is this program which doesn't make you indifferent to what happens to somebody else. And what is compassion? When you don't let your intellect interfere with that and act. So that means that program you honor and you make it real and you translate it into action. You become compassionate human being. And compassion is needed for being a good teacher also. People fault and they do things and they project on you and they give you names and you still have to be caring for them and you still have to give them a chance and you still have to try to lift them up. That requires tremendous compassion. And understanding. And if you're dismissive, you can't be a good teacher. This is why our teacher was called Dayananda. And Daya means compassion. And one thing that he definitely had was compassion. Some very subtle things he used to tell. And he used to say that, sometimes there was a long line for people to see him before he went to the class. And some of them were important people, some of them were villagers, some of them were completely destitute people who just needed his help. And there was a long line, and people would say, why is he late for 5 minutes? Because there is a long line waiting to see him. And he may not be able to spend a lot of time with each one of them because he has other responsibilities. But he would look into the eyes of each one and talk to them for that particular time. Even if you're speaking to them for 2 minutes, 3 minutes, doesn't matter. That time, give your full attention. And he used to say, my mind always goes to what can I do for this person to make his life better. The person has traveled with a hope that this person perhaps can help. Can I just be totally unaware and think about, this is the time and I have my class and I don't have time for you? No. The lives of people. So, even if you spend 2 or 3 minutes, you listen to them, give them full attention, look into their eyes, and in your mind think, what can I do? And then he used to say, sometimes I can't do anything. Because, people say, my wife is really sick and she's in the hospital and she's in the last stage. What are you going to do? You can't really. You may know some doctors and, you may help in some ways. But sometimes you can't do anything. He said, even if I can't do anything, I can always do one thing. Pray for their well-being. What a heart. What a fine human being. These are things which touch me so much you cannot imagine. What a noble human being. So what it means is, these are anybody. And please don't think that he was compassionate and we have to glorify him. All of us can become compassionate. All of us can act on our empathy instead of dismissing it. You start little cultivating. When you feel like indifference, go little forward and express little. Next time you can do little more. Next time you can do little more. And over a period of time, you become this caring person who's not indifferent. So this is what the value. So what is self-mastery? You have series of thoughts You can't control all the thoughts. You can't say, this is the thought that I want and this is what I don't want. It has come without your permission. But having come, you can decide what you want to do with it. Some you can just simply let them pass. Some you need to correct, and some thoughts you have to cultivate. When you feel like reaching out, try your best to reach out and not let your mind interfere and say, what do I care? Because human heart is a kind heart. It's a caring heart. 2 minutes. Okay, so this is what we call self-mastery. So, amanitvam, adampitvam, ahimsa, kshantihi, arjavam, acharyopasanam, shaucham, stairyam, atma vinigraha. The next value is indriyartheshu vairagya. That we will do next time because there are only 2 minutes, but I'll just give you the translation so you can Indriya artheshu vairagyam. Indriya means senses. Artha means the objects of senses. What the objects that the senses come in contact with. Vairagyam comes from Vairagya is a common word which is used in spirituality. And if you're not careful, it is translated as detachment, dispassion. So it kind of creates some kind of a distance and some kind of a dislike, stay away, the sense of staying away. Right? That is the general meaning, but the real meaning of Sanskrit is not staying away, but it's not staying away from the objects. It is, this vairagyam comes from the root ranj, means to color. And this gives it an abstract sense, the nature of not coloring. It's a prefix which gives not. So what it means is, when the senses come in contact with objects of the universe, we always view them not as they are, but through our own coloring.
What else?
With our own coloring. So we have so many predetermined ideas. We don't see them with a freshness. So what Vairagya means is giving every object the real value, neither adding nor subtracting values, the value of that object. So I will talk about it a little bit more in detail in the afternoon class. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.